me. Excuse my voice, but I had some sore throat. But if you cannot hear me at the back, please let me know. And is it possible? Okay. So we are now going to a second part of the of this workshop, when we go into the hazardous or the more hazardous side of the street. When we talk about about e-waste, or we, as it is known, the waste of electric and electronic equipment, then we will have to take a different view. Although when we have been dealing with plastics, or you have been dealing with plastics long time, and plastics have not been put in the right perspective about the toxicity. It may be low, but still there are many studies with the endocrine disruptors of even the monomers where the plastic is produced. But when we go into the or the e-waste, as it's more colloquially known, we go into other substances, basically cadmium, lead, and others, nickel, that we know. But on top of that, the link with plastics is essentially the flame retardants. The flame retardants are the motive of the Stockholm Convention, as we all know. And well, they are still used a lot. And I could give you some tests before I continue, some demonstrations that 10 to 20% of the plastics have flame retardants, of the plastics contained in electronic and electric equipment. I will start also presenting so briefly myself, but I started doing this. I have seen this coming like waves 40 years ago. End of the 70s, I did my master's in recycling, on recycling, which is a long time ago. Many of you, for some of you who have even been born, but the recycling was there already. 20 years later, in the 2000, came this wave with the Brundtland A-form and all this, and the cleaner production centers were created or were proposed by UNEP and UNIDO to produce this, that also started the area together with eco-design. And now 20 years later, now in the 20s, we have this trend of circular economy. But for me, in the end, it has been just resources optimization. But resources optimization trying to keep well, the hazardous part. That is maybe the most difficult part in the management of we and for the policies. People just keep on thinking that we have to recover resources. That's true, but we are forgetting what is maybe more important, which is to protect the population from the cops. So in a bit brief, I was telling you, well, I developed really I was just remembering my first work on e-waste in around the 87, 89. And at that time, there were already many people interested in recovering the gold, which is what motivates most of the people. Of course, now there is another gold, the white gold, lithium, which is in the batteries. In a brief estimation we did, the lithium in the electronic equipment in Mexico, which is about 130 million, is enough to power 200,000 cars, electric cars, the lithium contained in those. So now this comes again to this concept of circular economy, where we are trying to get the advantage of what is contained. But we will see. So yes, telling you this, the last 10 years I have been working mostly on hazardous waste basically for UNDP, polychlorinated biphenyls, and the most recent 6 or 7 years specifically into plastics. Plastic we developed to prepare the offer, the UNDP offer plastics, and now well we are trying to combine with the e-waste. But I was going to say that well the presentation will be split into parts. Mr. Veine, is that correct? Veine Bigquist will present this policy review in Europe related to or EPR on WE, and I will do after him some presentation on the more practical side, the street side of waste that most of you may know, but there are so many parts of the chain that have to be addressed and have to be examined in order to have a policy that is useful. So without further, please present.
Thank you very much. We're just waiting to change the presentation. Thank you very much for that introduction. And as Guillermo told us, I will give just a very short overview about the situation in Europe. And yesterday, you know, we talked about mainly about packaging, and today we are talking about products. And of course, the main target with the packaging is to protect the products. So also when we have electronic products, many times also we have a packaging around the product. So there is a large variety, of course, of this kind of things. And this slide just show you how complex this area is. And just think about the different lifetime that occurs, and also some other features which I come back to a little bit later on. But in Europe, we have this directive on e-waste from 2002, and then later on 2012. In Sweden, we have a separate national EPR system already from 2000, but that was sort of reintegrated into the European rules later on. And in addition to the directive itself, there are also some supplement rules, as I told you about yesterday, specifically on reporting and also calculation methods, because the way to calculate the achievement of the targets when it comes to waste has been changed the last years. So as before, it was quite a simple calculation based on the weight, how much you collected, but now it's a different, more complex method, which also take into the consideration that products' weight has declined over time. For example, you can remember, some of you, of course, that the TV set, maybe 15 years ago, it weighed like 30 kilograms, or very heavy, or even more, and today only 7 or 8. So therefore, recycling targets just looking on the weight itself will be misleading. So therefore, it was a change in the calculation method. And also, according to the revised European directive from 2014, there is more correlation also into the eco-design directive in order to deal with the long-term effect of this product. Of course, as we discussed already yesterday, the main aim with this directive is to, first of all, prevent waste, and that also include what Guillermo told us about, to prevent content of hazardous material, and to promote reuse and recycling. And reuse is a new target also in the revised directive, because it was not really there in the very beginning. And the idea is, of course, to more pressure into reuse to have a better understanding for the future of the circular economy. Of course, this is very different in different parts of the world, depending on the labor cost, for example. I used to take my coffee machine at home as an example, because we bought a coffee machine. It was now almost 10 years ago. It was like a high-end product, and it costed like 5 or 6 times the cheapest product. But the main thing with this product is that you can change the heat element in this, because that will be worn up after a couple of years, or maybe 5 or 6 years. And it's actually possible to go back to the retailer and have it changed, and then you have practically a new coffee machine again. That you cannot do for these very cheap machines, because they don't have that feature. And also the labor cost in order to repair such a cheap machine will be very, very costly. So the legislators in Europe, they wanted to put more pressure into reuse. And then, of course, to support resource efficiency generally. And also, according to this revised directive in 2014, the categories of the different or the different parts of e-waste were changed. So now there are 6 categories, and to the right you can see the international symbol for how to handle electronic waste. And these 6 categories are temperature regulation equipment, like freezers, coolers, things like that, screens, and then we're talking about lamps, but not the old bulbs. They are not included. Large equipment and small equipment, typically it can be also toy, and then small IT equipment like smartphones and so on. So these are the categories that we have to deal with. But there are quite a lot of exclusions in this directive. For example, bulbs, the old part of lamps are not included, but in Sweden, actually, we have a separate EPR still for the old bulbs. So, however, there are not many bulbs anymore, but during the transition period, of course, there were some bulbs. And also excluded are like military equipment, large industrial machines, production machineries, space equipment, and also like trains for public transport. They are not in the WE directive at all. Of course, there are many challenges when it comes to e-waste. To the right, you can see a symbol. We created in the Nordic countries a new, what we call a pictogram system with symbols for different kind of waste. So this is the symbol for e-waste, elavfall in Swedish. And you can find the same symbol also in the Nordic countries. And now we are trying to persuade the European Union to use this kind of a common system, because it will be also different system, different signs for organic waste and for paper, plastic, etc., etc. And the idea for this symbol to the right is that it should follow the product. So it will be put on the product, and then it is the same symbol also in the collection point. So you can refer it and you understand better. The labeling system refers also to the collection system, and that makes it more easy for people to participate. But anyway, there are thousands of products, of course, and they have different content, and they have also, of course, very different life cycle. Some of these products have a life cycle of maybe 20, 30, 50 years or even more, and some only just a few months, depending on its quality. That is also an interesting thing we recognize when we started to work with this, the transition period, because when you introduce, at least in Europe, a directive, then from a certain, it will apply from a certain time. But what happens with all the products that were all before and which are still in the market? Then we have the problem of what we call the historical waste. So you have to find out how to deal with the historical waste also. And normally in Europe, the responsibility for the historical waste will go back to the municipalities. But of course, you have to find a clear line of change. Obviously, there are a large variety of components and materials, and there are the number of producers, you cannot even count them because they are all over the globe. Everywhere there are producers of small or larger electronic equipment, which then are shipped around the globe the whole time. And then, of course, we have also the problem with, for example, built-in batteries, which we have to handle as well. So there are also specific targets in Europe for recycling and for preparation for reuse. And as you can see here, there are some difference, and that difference 75 to 85 refers to different categories, the 6 categories I told you about earlier. I don't have time to go into exactly how it is for the different categories. It just gives you an idea that the recycling targets are quite high and quite ambitious, and also the target for preparation for reuse. And then, of course, there are targets also how to report back about the products on the market and reporting on the recycling and reuse, so you can calculate what was the success of the system. And you also have to have an approval nationally in each member country about the collection system. It refers to the discussion we had yesterday to have a coverage all over the country, not only in one city. You know, you need to have a coverage all over the country, and that creates quite a lot of challenge, especially if you have a large number of producer responsibility organization, as we discussed yesterday. And there are also in this directive also some specifications regarding sanctions if you don't live up to the requirements. So what experience can we say about we have had now this directive generally about 10 years, you can say. Yeah, as I said before, it's a very complex waste stream. We have recycling, but we have seen so far a very small, if any, effect on the design of the product, which was obviously one of the main targets for the EPR introduction itself. Perhaps it's coming now a little bit more and more, but it goes very, very slowly. And yeah, you can always discuss why is that, but perhaps one of the explanation could be that from the producer's point of view, the influence of the directive is very weak compared to what they wanted to give to the market, because they are interesting, you know, to give new products with new features the whole time. Reuse is very small scale up till now. And when we talk about recycling and recovery, it's mainly on the valuables materials and those materials that we know very well about. And it almost neglectable when we are talking about, for example, the critical raw materials that we all really would like to recover, but in practice, very little of them are recovered because also it is a costly process. And we also have recognized that the collection of small equipment and IT equipment and other kind of small equipment are not at all in the size as when we come to the larger ones. So that is also a large challenge, I would like to say. And in some countries, there are some problem with the too many PROs that we discussed yesterday to find out that they are not competing themselves into a race to the bottom, and nobody will cover the whole country for when it comes to collection, for example. So this is also something that have been recognized in Europe in general. So I will also say a few words about batteries. And batteries are, of course, a little bit less complex than when we talked about e-waste or electronic products. In Europe, we had a directive on batteries from 2006. And we talked about a little bit about this in yesterday. You don't need to be expert in the European Union legislation procedures, but it might be interesting for you anyway to know that a directive is something which is implemented in the member states a little bit differently, but within a timeline. So there will be some difference between member states. Whilst, for example, on batteries, we have now already from this spring, actually in March this year, we have a new regulation on batteries. And regulation is something different, as Michael told us about yesterday, because this regulation is mandatory for every member state, and it goes into force from a certain time, and it applies exactly the same all over the place in every member state, no deviations. And well, there are some pros and cons about that, but this is the fact. And in this new regulation, the interesting thing is that one have tried to integrate the larger ideas about the Green Deal, about the Circular Economy Action Plan in Europe, and also the strategies for batteries and mobility, for example, concerning the handling of critical raw materials. And it combines also eco-design directive, product regulations, and waste rules such as the EPR. So it to put everything together. So this is something different. It's not really an EPR system anymore. It's something more complex and more bigger. And I would say, this is my thinking, it's a new role model. Because for the first time in history, I would say, now we can really have a legislation pattern which can satisfy our ideas about going forward to the circular economy, which was difficult only with respect to the EPR, because we wanted to include also these aspects concerning life cycle thinking, concerning performance, for example, concerning guarantees and such things. So in this new regulation, the target for collection will be increased to almost 80% by 2030. So it's very impressive. And the target for material recycling efficiency. What is that? That is also something new, because before we only talked about material recycling or just only recycling, but it was a little bit unclear. What is that? Well, you send it to a sorting plant and then you use it, but you don't know exactly how much you use. But here we introduced something, and this is something that I myself was very much in favor for. And during a previous position, I argued very heavily in order to introduce a material efficiency quota. So we know that it's used for its purpose, because otherwise there is a risk for what I call fake recycling. And yeah, fake recycling we don't want. So this material recycling efficiency is a new thing. And then, as I told you about, we have the integration of the performance, for example, the lifetime of a battery and how it works on. And there are also minimum content recycling material in the batteries, and that varies quite a lot depending on the on the type of batteries, of course. So you can say it's kind of an improved EPR system, but it's really not only an EPR system anymore. It also includes then the design requirements. It's included in the regulation already. That was part coming from the previous eco-design directive. And also what is now introduced, a so-called product passport, which is used for larger equipment and larger batteries, of course. And the idea is that that product passport should follow the product throughout its lifetime. So you can use it and you can have all the information, what is the content of this battery when you want it to recycle it in the end of the day. And that also means that you will have a better control about the chemical content. And there is also a certain chapter about due diligence, and that is about how you really collect the raw material from the very beginning, you know, from different parts of the world, and the working conditions could be quite difficult. And the due diligence is also about how can you follow a transparent system in order to follow what happens with the battery once it's scrapped. So the producers will be responsible to guarantee that it's fully transparent, the future activity with the scrap product. So it's very ambitious and a very new way to get in touch with these activities. And I think it can be a new role model, but I'm not sure, as we also said yesterday, it will not fit all kind of products or all kind of directives. We don't know. We will see. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we'll continue with the presentation. So to put it into context, the e-waste stream, with the context we compare with the previous sessions yesterday, when we talk about 430 million tons, which is the plastic that is produced, and out of those, about 140 million tons are single use or packaging. And that is the size of the market, just the resins. When we put it into context, the e-waste or the WE stream would be at least twice as much. So when we are thinking of this exponential growth that there has been with plastic, the data are not recorded here with the pandemic, but it will just accelerate the growth. Also, the same happened into the electronics. The electronics area, we all know that with this distance work, we all needed more equipment. But what has not been accounted for are these two lines: the plastic waste externality, which has not been taken into account, and also the toxic plastic waste, which is, of course, it is much higher or more important to the health detriment. No, then so when we are trying to think about the policy making, we should be very much aware of this, because there the strong trend, at least, well, the countries I know of, the largest interest is in material recovery rather than the toxic part. So when we continue with this 340 billion tons of packaging compared to 14 million ton in plastic, plastic contained in the electronic equipment, because electronic equipment stream is about 53, 55 million tons per year. But out of those, about 1/3 is plastic. So we are thinking about one order of magnitude. But however, how can we compare these two streams in the effects on health? When we were preparing the offer from UNDP, one of the strong discussions was on that, what to base it on the offer. What is the main goal of this? So if we take about health, then we have this 14 million. And then we compare the economics, the low value, relative value of plastic, and the relatively high value of we or cost, because there are studies, because people try to think that just by recycling electronic scrap, we can get a lot of money. Like that is a general thought about this also for all kind of waste. And that is maybe true if that is not done properly. There are works, economic works, where the cost of processing e-waste takes about 50 to 60% of the total processing cost is taken by the elimination of the hazardous part. So it is not just the processing if we don't take care about the plastic. And then the problem extends into the Stockholm Convention, because then if we have cups in the plastic and we recycle it and mix it with other plastics, then as you may be aware of these, there are some toys and things for children that have cups because they were recycled in a mixed pattern. Well, comparing the volumes, they are different. Of course, 1/10 of the plastic, but then we have this. So with this in mind, we are trying to prepare here for UNDP, the regional hub. This is like a short review of the projects that UNDP has conducted over the last 8 years, approximately. 4 or 5 of these just started, but if we see the distribution, and this for about $90 million in 8 years, which is, for me, is very, very small compared to other areas of work, but it is about $90 million. About 40% is directly to hazardous waste. This is upstream to work on prevention of emissions of cups, but we have waste, plastic waste, about 50% together with plastic. So about half of the projects so far are directed into this. And in the projects, some of them are more interested, or actually in the plastics projects, most of them are directed mostly to go into the collection or cleanups, and very few, if any, are directed into policy making. No? And the projects are about 2. Well, of course, they was one in China, the first e-waste project in the world that was supported by the GEF, and this is number 3. But that is about the distribution. Another point to notice here is that the financing of these projects are about 3/4 financed by GEF and bilateral governments or organizations, and only 1/4, about 1/4 by companies, by the private sector. And with that, I would say that just this is sorry, basically the India project on plastic recovery. So there is not really much sources where to tap from, actually. And I don't think, well, in GEF 8, there may be some more, but still, for me, the conclusion is to look for some other sources that is that will increase this area, the private sector. And in that area, particularly the e-waste has a strong interest because the OEMs, the manufacturers of equipment, original equipment, are very much aware that EPR, even the Ellen MacArthur and the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, they said that EPR is the way to go. Of course, they have it in the small prints. In the small print, it says, but with financing from governments. No, so they think they will go into this, but not paying. When we think about the size of this, we were just even in the discussion of this question of the circular economy that Wayne presented so well, that it is not a circle. It is more like a conic shape that is being developed, because for whoever has been working on waste knows that the remaining value of the solid material, either plastic or metals or other, is 5% at the most of the value contained. So what we will, of course, recirculate that 5%, but in the second circle, it will be smaller. And the energy, as also Wayne pointed out yesterday, thermodynamics don't lie, that the energy that was consumed in producing something is already spent. And I would put it together, these two areas, with the economic side, because for the production of one good, the profit has already been obtained. So when we try to recover the economic value contained, it is much more difficult. So I just wanted to make a reference to this, that these 21 projects that are in the region. So then when we go with a stronger focus onto what happens in the operation of a system of we management, well, we have this, well, EPR may take this square that is was trying to put here, the EPR, and we have the producer. The producer, it is just a long discussion to define it. The producer is the manufacturer, the importer, the large retailer, or many others, according to the countries of electronics. And then the role of the PROs becomes very important, I would say, because they are like the interface in between the other side of the industry, which is the recycling industry, the recycler or the refurbisher, which we know also that the refurbishing of e-waste, it is, of course, environmentally, it is very desirable. It is the most efficient way to keep on extending the life, the use and the use of resources. But now there are some companies that are objecting their equipment to be intervened. Nobody can touch their equipment. So the refurbishing, and there is a very, very large 10 to 20% of the equipment, the electronic that is recovered from people, from the civil society. It can be refurbished very easily and very cheaply and be reused. But still, it is a question. And when we see about the distribution between the civil society, which is, and the bulk consumers, which are companies or anything, the average is that about half of the electronics distribute for each. So this part of the bulk consumers is very easily. The recyclers, the refurbishers, go to a big company and ask them for their used computers and take them. But how do you do to recover from civil society? Civil society, we will see in the next slide, the difficulties it has to even to identify what to do with their waste. And I used to think that I could not believe it because, well, I have been working on this years, but many people don't still know what to do with their e-waste. So in this chain, this would be like the formal chain, and it can be, of course, it has in the producer responsibility organization, there may be some loopholes too, because I would say, well, in some of the experiences, they may not work as well as they should. Sorry to say this, but they may not work as well. But on the other hand, this part, the informal sector, when we are considering it, how do we include that? I would like to maybe in the panel to have a discussion on that. How can we include the informal sector into the policies? It's not just to help them to have a better living or like in some other projects, but just to insert them officially and really as a playing part. I could tell you, for instance, in Mexico, there is 150 recyclers, companies. And out of those 150, 80% are just collectors. So when we say here a recycler, sometimes, many times I use recycler between inverted commas, because the recyclers, they call themselves people who just pick up things, but not the real meaning that is taking it back to its original use, the material. But then the recyclers, out of those 150 companies, 80% were just collectors. They disassemble, take the most valuable part, which are the printed circuit boards, the copper cables, the aluminum, and the rest, which is mainly the plastic with flame retardants, just going to the garbage. So for me, this is a key area that in which it can be worked, and it works very much the same. That you would be. Well, actually, I was surprised in the studies that many of the recyclers, the official recyclers, don't have the permit to handle hazardous parts. They are just given the permit to handle like the not hazardous, but then you find like they are working like a laundry machine, that they are washing the hazardous part and send it. Some of them send it to the informal sector and finally wash their hands. So this just to give you an example of, there are 3 countries in Latin America, just to put with respect to Europe or to Asia, that have the 3 countries have recently joined more or less recently, the OECD, and the OECD from the 2021, 2010. And the 3 of them signed the Stockholm Convention long time ago. These are the populations. And still, for instance, this for Colombia, which had an EPR regulation from almost 10 years ago, there is no data on collection date. That's why, as we were saying also yesterday, the implementation of the policy is the most difficult part, the enforcement, to call it in a way. So there is no data, for instance, the collection rate, and these are, to me, are still very small. Of course, this is the official figures. When we go back to to this, then we come to this area that the informal sector still does a lot of the work. So we are when we are designing these policies, well, this would have to be taken into account. And then, well, the difference, Chile and Colombia regulated all the streams that finished, all the streams that were presented, that are six groups, but they are about 55 or 56 different categories where they are presented. So which would be the opportunities to work on here is it may look very obvious, but we don't know the size of the monster, and also the categorization of the different streams. No, this is very important. But here I would just to call your attention to implement or enforce the EPR regulations. Some of them are the streams, to know the dimensions of the streams, and this I didn't underline, but this is one of the key points. The last one, the formal sector needs to be professionalized, because we can go on doing this, but that should be also part of the policy development. And in the last what it has been missing. There is in the most recent projects for the GEF are these trained to go into business model development. I think Mr. Siliers, yesterday he mentioned this in one of the 4 points. Business models have to help or to go work together with the policy. Business model, I mean, at the bottom of the pyramid level, not at the top of the companies when they develop their business models and try to go on in the same pattern, but trying to develop this part. And well, you're pushing me, so I just wanted to give you an well idea of what I think. It is not UNDP's, but this is like the advantages of UNDP for helping in the development of these policies, high-level advocacy, also the honest brokerage, and the on-the-ground operation capacity, which has no. So that this would be like a conclusion. Sorry to extend. Thank you.
Yeah, take some time for questions. Sorry to intimidate you by standing over there and staring at you, because we do want to also hear from country representatives. Like if you have any questions or plan to launch EPR for e-waste, this is about the time to have a discussion with our experts from EU and also other countries.
Would it be possible to share some experience on this SME business models for this the battery disposal, especially the V management? Any experience we can reach to?
Yes, well, in the business models for the e-waste, well, are different. There is one question that also Mr. Siliers mentioned yesterday, that when we start with a pilot, it is not just to design it with a preconceived idea of what will happen, but in the business model, what you do is to do iterative approach. So the shorter and the faster the approaches. For instance, there is an example of a business model to me very successful, and it is not because it is in Mexico, but just because I know it. They try 26 different collection schemes, and they develop 18 prototypes different, and they brought like because one of the key elements of the waste management is the collection cost. You go to the collection, and they brought the cost from $4 per kilogram to 20 cents after some iterations, some refinements of the model. The project lasted about 18 months. And they did collections on buildings from schools. They have a very good, interesting model, going to schools in the name of the companies and conscientize the students, high school and universities. They collected, and after the awareness raising doing awareness raising with the students, then they collected the waste that the students brought, because as I mentioned, there is about 50% of the waste is in our houses. It remains there, and there are the studies on that, surveys and many other things. So there, that is the development of the model was successful in that aspect. Of course, the cost of processing, the cost of processing the hazardous part, that may be the case in your countries too, that there is no regulation. When they think about regulation, even the European directives, they mention bromine limit 1,000 parts per million. That is like the limit. But you don't analyze bromine in the plastic. You analyze the polychlorinated bromides. So there is no a direct correlation. An analysis of the plastic for the flame retardant may cost you, what was it? $50 per analysis. So you cannot be analyzing the equipment. What you do is with an X-ray fluorescence, you analyze bromine correlated to the bromide, and then you can tell this about, that's what I was telling you, about 10 to 20% of the plastic has flame retardants. And that has to be taken into account when you design the policy, because for instance, Mexico, there is no limit for bromine, and there is no place where you can send the plastic. The cement kilns, they don't want to be related, at least in Mexico, they don't want to be related to a hazardous waste. And then you are just left to put it into safety, how do you call it, confinement. But it still takes about 20% of the total operation cost of the recycling operation. And now there are only 5 or 6 companies that have the capability to refine the metals from the printed circuit boards. And these same companies, they don't want to receive the lithium batteries because they are explosive. And so they have special precautions for the transport, although it is not toxic, but it may explode. So that is many of the, like the chemical parts of the question.
Thank you, Dr. Guillermo, for very informative presentation. I have 2 questions. One is transport of a large e-waste, like a refrigerator, that are very difficult to transport. Is it a consumer responsibility or producer responsibility transport in these countries? Another question is, do you see any successful example of a partnership between informal sector and the companies for the collections, and how has it worked? The second question is informal sector. So I understand in many countries, informal sectors, and they are working to collect in the informal way. Has there been any successful example of partnership between the informal sector and the companies for the collection, effective collection of e-waste?
Well, the first question is with the refrigerators, the size. Yes, sometimes when laws or policies are made, not so much of the details are taken into account, like the transport. In this case, how do you transport your own refrigerator to the post office? No, like I know in Japan you can put it, send it back, but it has to be paid by the user. So that is where EPR plays this part, because that should be, of course, it is an enormous difficulty how to implement it. But the second, sorry, I couldn't grasp your what was the information to the informal?
Informal sector, the informal waste workers.
Yes.
They're collecting also, like in parallel with the formal system. Has there been any good partnership between the informal waste pickers?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, that's very important. Yes, at least the experience I have seen in India, well, and in some Latin American countries, including Mexico, is that there is a kind of depends on the location, but a kind of symbiosis between the informal and the formal. But the formal, unfortunately, take the good part of it, like the formal go and just buy the most valuable things, and they say you just sell me the cables, which is the copper, the aluminum, and the printed circuit boards, and you keep the rest. So I see people working on the field and dismantling the computers at the waste dumps, and then just taking, just literally breaking them with hammers to take the valuable part. But the desirable, of course, would be that trying to. There was we made a trial there, but then some political things having this intervention, like the leader of the union of waste pickers. He is the one who charges whatever you take. You have to pay him, and he pays, at least in plastics or in other, less than half of what you pay him to the people who do the work. Less than half. For instance, the printed circuit boards of the lowest type may be worth $2 a kilogram. But there are some other printed boards, very specialized, that may be up to $200. So all this branch, all this broad range is taken account of by the leaders.
Yeah, thanks for nice presentation. Just one small query. In one of your slide on one scheme for overall management of e-waste, you have just shown that some parts of e-waste channelized through the recycler to informal sector. But as per my understanding and experience, the e-waste is channelized to the informal sector from only producer responsibility organization or consumer and bulk consumer. There is no any way to get any authorized recycler to channelize the e-waste to the informal sector. But you have shown that some e-waste channelized through a recycler to the informal sector.
Yes, there are countries that I know that if some of the parts of the e-waste from the formal recycler is just like the getting rid of the hazardous part. Yes.
But why recycler channelize e-waste to the informal sector if they have getting all the equipment and everything with them? It is only the producer responsibility organization and consumer and bulk consumer who don't have any equipment or capability to recycle the product. They get their product to the informal sector only. No any recycler get the channelized to the e-waste to the informal sector.
Format. Yes, well, that is for me. If you notice, that was the dotted line. not, it was not a full line going from the formal to the informal. I can, but yes, yes, you're right. In the law or in the policy, that should be the way to do it. The formal recycler should finalize and report back everything to the PRO and to the OEMs or to the companies. But in this case, the cases that I know, some part of the streams may go.
Have you practical experience that recycler also channelize the e-waste to the informal sector?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
in our country, there is only producer responsibility organization and dismantlers are consumer and bulk consumer who get their e-waste to the informal sector only.
Yeah.
Not
Yes, I was
authorized
dealing
recycling.
with this hypothetical case because in Mexico we don't have EPR. There is no EPR.
Okay.
So almost anything can be done. It is some kind, some way compensated by what is called management plans. The producer makes his management plan and assigns like a PRO, but it is his private PRO for the management of e-waste. But there is no EPR.
Thank you.
Do you know the product to become waste? I mean, the product out of date or used many times, and then they collect, they export to the other country. Now the most of the electronic equipment, especially the mobilier, the immobilier, I mean the phone, and export to the other country like Vietnam. So either the European have some directive for this, and how you calculate the volume that you export to the other in the EPR. I mean the responsibility to collect and recycle the equipment.
Yes, well, that is has been well many times the question regarding Basel Convention, because Basel Convention is supposed to regulate what you export into the other countries, but for some countries, e-waste is not hazardous, so they can export it as a commodity. So then, but so for some others, it is hazardous. So the only way, that's why I pointed out the first in the last two slides, that it is, we have to know the balance, the material balance within the country, and that includes the exports and the imports, no? But the export of e-waste, there is always some well, loopholes where you can just export different materials without so much of a regulation. Of course, since well, most of the countries are within Basel Convention, but for instance, Mexico has a 3,000 kilometers border with the United States, and the United States is not signatory of Basel Convention. So in the practice, many things could be done across that border. I don't know if I answered your question.
I think this issue is very critical, actually, because we all know that illegal transportation of e-waste is one of the largest problem actually around the globe. And as we discussed yesterday, the transparency and the traceability is very weak, because once it comes to a sorting facility, most of the time you have very little control what happens afterwards, and also whether it goes for export. It's very easy to call it a material for reuse, and then it's not in the system at all, etc., etc. So this is a huge problem with illegal, and actually it's handled by mafia-like organizations in reality. like, drugs and trafficking and things like that.
Yes, sorry to complement the question about the business model.
Yeah, this is about the illegal traffic. This question is very important, but also the question of legal export electronic equipment to other countries. It's also very important. And I think your question was in this direction. It's regulated in European Union in most of the directives. It is required that when equipment or it applies also to batteries and to other waste streams, when it is exported for recycling abroad, the plant that will recycle the equipment should follow the same rules, the same conditions, the same operation types as it will be in Europe. So practically, this means that waste from Europe should not go to other countries if the processes are not the same as in Europe. But in reality, to control this, exporter and the ministries, the controlling authorities, they just require a permit from the importing country, permit of the plant. If it's licensed, it could go, but at least it would not go to informal recycling.
No more questions.
Thank you so much for coming back. So yeah, let's begin the next presentation. We have Ms. Gong Xun from Lenovo, China, joining. And she is an expert of life cycle assessment, product carbon footprint, eco design, and green manufacturing, as well as circular economy. And her company has been working with UNDP on a China e-waste project funded by Jeff. And that project has been a very successful example that we are trying to share with you, because through that project, we have promoted eco design principle, and Lenovo adopted that principle and developed a brand new laptop that has successfully eliminated up to 30 substances. So that is quite a big achievement. And Lenovo also has launched a series of campaigns and activities to really put eco design into practice. So we're very glad to have Ms. Gong Xun joining. But she's joining online, so yeah, it's a pity that we won't be able to see her in person.
Thank you very much, host. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Gong Xun from Lenovo Standard and Environmental Engineering. It's my great honor to be invited by UNDP in this workshop. And I really appreciate UNDP's continuously support to our industry and also our company. As just now, the host mentioned that UNDP and Lenovo has collaborated since 2014 through the Ministry of Ecology and Environment of China. We co-researched on the reduction of POPs and PDS throughout the life cycle of electrical and electronics equipment and associated waste in China to find a way to eliminate the restricted materials from even the design phase. We did go through all the chemicals used in the microcomputer products from the raw material for the baseline data, and at least 30 substances reduced in this project. And this project enlightened us to move forward on the way to use the eco-design for the promoting of EPR and circular economy. So that would be also the things we have did for the last few years and to contribute a lot for the eco-design and circular economy. So today, my topic is the circular economy and eco-design transition, the experience from the private sector. Firstly, I would briefly introduce you about Lenovo. Lenovo began on November 1st, 1984, with a group of 10 engineers in Beijing, China. And even in its beginning, Lenovo was agile in transforming itself First, from an importer of the televisions to developing a circuit board that will let IBM compatible personal computer process Chinese characters. And in 1990, Lenovo started manufacturing and marketing computers using its own brand name. We can publicly trade it after 1994 in Hong Kong. Lenovo is a China-based company and also has an international essential core. We acquired IBM's PC business in 2005, and including the ThinkPad laptop and tablet lines, and helped the company to go global, making it the third largest computer market worldwide by volume. And today, ours is the number one in the worldwide market. Since then, Lenovo has entered into joint venture with the ANC in Japan for PCs, Fujitsu for PCs, NetApp for servers, and also acquire Median in Germany for PCs, Stoneware for cloud and software service, as well as the Motorola smartphone business and IBM System X service. So after all these journeys, we have more than 63,000 employers span more than 30 countries worldwide. We do business in 180 markets, and we have 15 R&D locations worldwide, and the AI Innovation Center in Morrisville, Stuttgart, Germany, and Taipei, and Beijing. This is our operations around the world. We had headquarters in Beijing with key operation centers in Morrisville, North Carolina. And to further maximize the value of one Lenovo, we are building sales and operations into two platforms that support all business groups. Collaborate teams will also function as one Lenovo to support all business and telling the coherent story to global market and customers. So based on the Lenovo briefings, here I would like to introduce you our ESG work. Actually, most of our work here now in Lenovo, we have a top to bottom and also have a bottom to top structure that could collaborate between different functions and also to make this work efficiently. The strong ESG performance is part of a total solution for customer along with the product, service, and manufacturing. And for this job, we need the collaboration not only internal Lenovo, but also the external stakeholders. Take environmental leadership as an example. We meet or exceed all environmental requirements and continually reduce the environmental impacts of Lenovo's operations, products, and services. And we minimize the Lenovo's climate change impact and be a responsible steward of resources. And of course, the stakeholders requires shape our program and drive our focus. The clear metrics and the increased transparency will help better communicate our progress to these key groups, including the employee, the customer, the board of directors, local community, and also the advocacy groups, industry association, and investors, including a lot of those stakeholders that collaborate in this ESG work. And with the supporting, we made the corporate ESG KPIs for achieving our short-term and long-term ESG strategy. You can take a look at our corporate ESG KPI summaries. Here, I will specifically explain the environmental section today. Here are three key aspects we are looking at. In the environmental parts, we have the climate change mitigation, including the renewable energy, the GHG emission reduction, product energy efficiency. And in the circular economy, we are looking at the repair, reuse, and recycling, and also the other aspects that associate with our internal work. And for the sustainable materials, we are looking at the product and packaging, the recycled content, and the materials optimization. So once we set these ESG KPIs, we will also use those KPIs to tracking our year-by-year performance, and also to make sure that we will disclose our progress in our external ESG report, and also to advise, to adjust or promote many of the aspects in our internal, and also to collaborate with the external. So I will, in the next sections, to introduce you the three key aspects and spend more time on the circular economy and also the eco-design. The first one I will mention is about the climate change. So that will be the things globally we'll talk about and people pay special attention to. As for this topic, Lenovo has begun this work since 2010. Actually, we have set our first goal in 2010 based on the financial year 2009 to 10. So that is a target focusing on the scope 1 and scope 2 emissions to have a reduction of our operational emissions of 20% in the 10 years time frame. Actually, we have raised our targets in 2015 because we have a worldwide energy management team that could collaborate from the overseas and also within China. So we have a globally collaboration on that, and based on our science-based data collection, we have renewed our target in 2015. That is to strengthen the target to 14% reduction in the carbon emission part. Actually, 10 years later, in 2009, we have exceeded our target by achieving a 92% reduction of our scope 1 and scope 2. And based on that, we set our science-based target, emission target, reduction targets, SBTi are setting on that. We are looking at the scope 1, 2, and 3. So we have setting this goal based on our previously more than years data collection, and also our internal technology, and also the product design experiences on that. And we could set those 10 years reduction plans based on the SBTi. So for this target, we're looking at not only the scope 1, 2, but also the scope 3. Because for the ICT industry, the scope 3 has an even larger impact to our company and the industry itself. So that would be a huge part we need to take into consider, and how to make the supply chain together reduce our carbon emission in the following 10 years. We have a 15 reduction of the operational emissions, including the scope 1 and 2, and have a 25% reduction in the emission intensity of the value chain. So that will be the scope 3. That will be our target in the 10 years and have passed in the science-based target evaluation. And also based on that, we are looking at the science-based net zero targets proposed. So that will be the things we started in this year. And we have a proposal to have this kind of calculation and a lot of data collection to provide it to SBT to have this reduction all our emissions by 90% and has a carbon neutralization remaining 10%. So that will be our target towards the net zero. And we have that plan focusing on the 2050, our proposed time. So that will be our climate change steps from the very beginning to right now. And that will be also the very key aspects we were looking at in the following years. So besides that, we have a lot of working on the circular economy. We are looking at the circular economy work in 3 aspects. One is design, another is use, and the third one is return. Let's first look at the design part. We have a smarter circular design setting that is designing out the waste and pollution. including the sustainable material, recycled content, and the material optimization. We have set the corporate KPIs towards the circular designs, including we will have 100% of PC products to contain post-consumer recycled content materials. That is a material Lenovo has begun to use since 2005. And the second one is the 300 million pounds of the post-consumer recycled content plastic will be used in our product. And also the 90% of PC products plastic packaging and the 60% of smartphone packaging made from the recycled materials. In the past financial year of the 21st to 22nd, we have the below highlights that associate with those key KPIs, including we expanded the use of the closed loop recycled plastic to 248 products and introduces recycled metal, aluminum, and magnesium to 4 products. And also we used over 122 million kilograms of recycled plastic since 2005. Also, we eliminate 497 metric tons of packaging consumption by weight, making the total number over 3,017 metric tons since 2008. So that would be the things we do a lot of work in the design phase to phase in the new materials and contribute to the circular economy. And the second one is the smarter circular use. We're focusing on the optimizing use of products and resources, including the parts repair and reuse, the product energy efficiency, and Lenovo TrueScale. In this corporate KPIs, we have a 76% of repairable PC parts repaired, and 84 of PC repairs can be done at customer sites, and 30 to 50% product energy efficiency improvement. So that will be also associated with the carbon reduction targets. And also we are moving forward on those targets to see how we could generate and to make a better circular use phase in the next step. So for the past financial years, we have the highlights that we processed 324,000 metric tons of computer equipment through its contracted service provider, and over 93% is recycled and reused in 2021. And the third part of our circular economy, the key aspect is the smarter circular return. We are capturing the resources and value during the return phases, including the customer take back and assets recovering services. So during this section, we have 800 million pounds of products reused and recycled. And also I will give you a brief look at what we have done in the ARS, and also our take back channel have been done. So this is a roadmap of driving the use of the recycled content, especially our closed loop PCR. That is the material that we have begun this use since 2005. But after 2017, we are looking at the closed loop PCC that could use in our ICT equipment and increase the closed loop scenario that could use in our product. So in that year, we have a newly released product shall contain a minimum of 200 or 1000 PCC. And we began use this closed loop PCR in 2 products, display and all-in-one desktop. And since then, we have expanded the use of the closed loop products. And also we qualified new grades of the closed loop PCR for additional recent chemistry and suppliers. This is a very challenging work as we need to maintain the quality and also the customer use, and also need to maintain the usage of the new material. So that will be the challenge both for our supply chain and also the R&D work. And also in the next year, in 2018, we expanded the use of the closed loop PCR to 66 products. And also we have first use of this kind of material in the Lenovo notebook application. And we have applied that in the top machines, the carbon machine of our ThinkPad portfolio. And also we have numerous desktop and visual models used more than 25% of closed loop PCR by the total product weight. And after 2010, we expanded the use of closed PCR into 103 products and began the usage of it in the server application. Also, that could be make the service to the data center and also the company's think system in the next step. So so far in the last year, we have used the closed PCR to 248 products and introduced the ocean-bound plastic content in 5 products, and also to introduce the recycled aluminum in 3 products, also the recycled magnesium in 1 product. In the next step, we are also looking at the other kind of new material could be used in our products, and we will also expand the use of the recycled plastic and also the recycled metal. So that will be the usage of our closed loop products. So we can see that we are using this content in laptops, desktop, workstation, monitor, accessory, and a lot of machine types in our internal. It is also, we have used the recycled content since 2005 and have a carbon reduction more than 60,000 tons for this usage. So another part of the circular economy is that we're making a lot of progress on the packaging highlights. We are using the tabless cartoon designs that could be used the new cartoon design to eliminate one-time use plastic tape to saving the tape and also use more plastic-free packaging in the next step. And we also use the universal and reusable design to have the Unico design allow the reuse of several sizes of notebook multiple times and eliminating waste and improve the customer efficiency. Also, we are looking at the bio-based and recycled material. We mentioned about the recycled material we used in the product, but also for the packaging, we are explore more material type and also the new material type that could benefit for our environmental impacts, such as bamboo and such kind of packaging reduce the size and also the weight, could improve the transportation CO2 emissions, and also that could also generate even more sustainable packaging for our next step. And also we are looking at the plastic-free packaging that could combine the bamboo fiber technology into other innovation materials and leading this technology into our packaging to eliminate the other kind of one-time used plastic used in our packaging. So based on those technology, and we have a lot of savings through the use of the bamboo fiber packaging, also the self-lock bottom cartoon. With this design, we have the reduction of the carbon emission of 16.7 and also contributes to the logistic expense that could have a cost saving. So it is a great way that we could use that for the next step and also use for the different ways of our packaging. That will be also an important part for our future development. And for this slide, we are talking about Lenovo product take-back programs. Since 2008, Lenovo has enabled the recycling and reuse of 325 million kilograms of IT products. And we have this taking back channel all over the countries we are selling our products. We have the customer programs that is convenient solution differed by geo and our regulatory requirements that could also be taking back our customers' used products and to make this into a channel to do the final disposal. And also the electronic, the batteries and packaging accepted in many geos so far in the customer programs. And for the enterprise program, we have the asset recovery service to offer globally that could provide our customer a safe and also warranty ways to dispose the products that's used. And we will just make this way to erase the essential information in the equipment, and also we will just have this safe channel and make the compliance in different geo to make sure that we have the way to take that product and make it well proposed disposal. So that would be the Lenovo product taking back programs we are providing based on our consumer channel and the enterprise program. And for the next part we want to share is about the Lenovo's eco-design. Actually, we always talking about the end of life disposal, a lot of things, that actually 80% of the environmental impacts was settled when during the design phase. So that would be the very essential part we need to take a look at and spend more efforts on. That is the way Lenovo have been done to taking a life cycle approach to eco-design. That is, we from the very beginning to looking at each aspects during the product design and also the different sections and phases, how we could do and what we could make this greener or more sustainable technology into our design, and that could be contribute to the final disposal and a lot of circular economy EPRs actions. So for this slide, we can see that we are looking at not only the final recycling phases, we are looking at the very beginning on the restricted materials, what kind of materials we should take a look at, and the baseline of this generation, and how will be designed a next generation product with more efficient product and maybe lower kind of the substances with this use of the restricted materials. And also the energy section, how will be to provide a energy consumption, a lower energy consumption products to our customer. And that could be also a combined solution of the BIOS, PCBs, and a lot of R&D work will be conducted in the energy section. And also the packaging we are talking about is referring to the sustainable materials, environment-friendly materials, and also for the product itself, how we could phase in the environmental friendly material in our product, not affect the safety and quality issue in the ICT equipment. And also in our green manufacturing, we also have a lot of explore on the manufacturing phases to use the lower energy consumption and also the high efficiency manufacturing way to do the production of our specific product. And also in the internal, we have the IT solution and platform that could be used for tracking and do some digitalization in this kind of data tracking and mining. It could be also a very important part because so far we have a lot of data in specific company and also the industry. So how will be the data could be shared and also be better analysis based on that, how we could do the eco-design to specific product and also the specific industry. That would be the way we could have this overall thinking. And also we have this kind of development and explore on the IT solution and platform established. And also for the recycling phase, we are looking at the ways to recruit the very verified third party and our vendors to provide us the solution for better taking back and also the disposal of the final product, and also how will be the refurbish, reuse of the products of our next step is also our key focusing. We would like to explore more in the next step. So based on the life cycle approach, we are using the life cycle assessment methodology internally to do the scientific data calculation, and based on those calculations to see how we could do the decision and to do the trade-off analysis for our product. Actually, in the life cycle assessment, that would be a way in the previously used in the academic to very detailed analysis the product or some objects, the environmental impacts. And that would be also the good way for our product and also the industry to analysis and to generate the final data. And how would be the data reflect the environmental impacts? And we could see from the environmental impacts to see the hotspot and do the reduction. And also we could do some increase and transformations in some phases. So we have this LCA platform inside Lenovo to have the background database, and together with Lenovo product general data to have this database calculated in our software, and we could generate the not only the product level LCA report, but we also could look at the raw material and the manufacturing procedure and also the component level LCA. So that would be the things, the environmental impacts could be seen in different layers, and we could, based on that, to do a lot of analysis. And also to, based on those data, we could have this green supply chain data collection. And also when we want to face in the new technology or the environmental friendly material, we could also use this methodology to see how will be the final results. And it is scientific based data could support us to do the internal decision for our design phase. So you can see in the bottom part, this is an example of a specific product that is the environmental impacts of the different life cycle stages, and also the ratio of the environmental impact categories at different stages. Very detailed information was there. So that would be the procedure we conducted this work. Just as we mentioned, not only focusing on a specific product, but we could do a lot of analysis just to split the product into component level. That is, we're focusing on the different batteries and the main board display. We could see the differences between the supplier providing us the components, and to see how will be the environmental impacts associated with those components. And also we could go with the raw material level. We put here the raw material of the plastic, recycled plastic and recycled metal. That is, we have done some modeling inside our company, and we go to the industry to see how that could be manufactured in the industry, and how will be that work in the whole procedure. And after that, we could have this number to see if this material has the reduction of the environmental impacts comparing with the virgin material, and also the different suppliers will have the different data to have the final results. So that would be the procedure we will do to do the industry process investigation. And after that, based on the data modeling, we will have the final data to do the analysis. Not only the GHG emission, we can see that a lot of other environmental aspects we are looking at, such as the human toxicity and also the other acid acidification a lot of things could be do this analysis to see how will be the impacts to our environment. So that will be the way we are using in selected products and selected materials inside Lenovo so far. And in the next step, we are looking forward to have the chance to do more research internally that could be have the more efficient and science data-based way to do the next step analysis. And also we believe that it is also a good way to taking EPR and the circular economy into the consideration, because sometimes we will have the expand of the lifetime of our specific products and some component. But so far, we do not have a lot of research on that. If we could have more data and research on those aspects, that would be benefit for the industry to see what will be the better way to do our circular economy and EPR work for the next step. But that's really depends on the collaboration between the brand company and also the supply chain, and need a lot of efforts and research resources in the next step. So that would be today's contents of my section. I'm very pleased to have this sharing with you and very glad to hear your comments and questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gongxun. I'm not sure whether you can use your video maybe so that we can actually see you, because in the conference room, we do have this projector that can that allows us to see you if you can open your video.
I'm so sorry about that. I just had a try, but it seems something wrong with my video. So
okay, but anyway, thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much, because I think we definitely benefited a lot from your presentation, and we can actually see that the private sector is actually on the forefront of driving the change towards circular economy. And I think your presentation also covers both today and yesterday's discussion. It's not only about e-wastes. We can see that Lenovo has also done quite a lot to improve its packaging. So there are a lot of plastics also saved from some of the practices of the company. And I'm not sure whether participants, do you have any questions for her, or if you want to share like similar path that companies in your country has been taken on, it would also be appreciated. Thanks. No question, really? Okay, good. Thanks. Thank you for breaking the ice.
Thank you very much for a very intensive presentation, which gives a very good view about your work concerning how to extend the life of materials. But I wanted to ask your efforts and your research in order to also extend the product's lifetime and the experience of that. How can the lifetime itself be expanded before it will be scrapped? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your questions. I think that will be a great question, and that is also the aspect we are exploring. Actually, in the past, Lenovo is more focusing on the take back and disposal of product. Some of the requirements was coming from our customer, because some of the enterprise customer, they are requesting our equipments to be well disposed with a secure and also the erase of the data and a lot of things. So that would be the things we will have from our customer. That also is our pattern we previously used to dispose our products and to well dispose it. But for the the next step, this is the things we are looking at. So the extend our second life, our product, that would be the way for our product to better have a longer time, but not directly go to the recycling procedure. Actually, after the use of the, especially for the enterprise product, actually maybe 3 to 5 years later, the product will be replaced by the new generation in our enterprise customer. So it seems that those products have a potential to be reused again. And also for our consumer products, for the customer, they are using the consumer products. That is also the way that they are looking at. So some of our partners, for the Novus partners, now they are trying to do something to such as to refurbish the product and to lend those products to some of the equipment users to have the second life extend in the practice. And also for Lenovo internal, we are looking at the potential to how to extend the product and also the component level, such as we have some component coming back and that could be used in the product manufacturing for the second life. That also will be the way we could to extend the component level things. Actually, I have to say that I do not have the specific data so far. It is the things we are continuously do this kind of work. But I believe that in our next year or maybe 2 or 3 years ESG report, we will have more data and more practices there to extend the use of our IT equipments. Thank you for your question and hope it could support some of your understanding of this part.
Any other questions? Looks like Ms. Gongxun has done a great job, so there's really no questions because she's really clear about her presentation. All right. Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Gongxun. Thank you for joining us. So we do hope that you can, I think in your presentation, you also leave your email, right? So maybe if you have other questions, you can directly send to her and she's able to respond. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye.
So I think we are just right on time. We can move on to the next part. So the next is a panel discussion that is going to be moderated by Mr. Anderson. Ms. Anderson is the regional coordinator for Montreal Protocol Chemicals and Waste Unit in Asia Pacific, and he's going to, I guess, talk about some of the common challenges on e-waste management, together with colleagues from Indonesia, and Tang, who is the senior project manager working on JEF projects, and also Saloni from India. She, I think you met her yesterday, right, when she talked about the informal sector engagement in Indonesia, but in India, but she's also going to talk about e-waste management today. And thank you so much for joining, and as well as Guillermo. Thanks.
Thank you, Xin, and thank you for the kind agreement of you all to be part of this panel. So hopefully it will be fruitful discussions. And well, I think I would like to as food for thought, I would like to ask Saloni from India, because I mean, India is really a unique case. It's a huge country with a huge population. And I know there is already an EPR regulation in the country, but it's a very unique type of setting because it gives quite a good flexibility to the manufacturers to establish their own EPR systems, right? And at the same time, we know that India has a huge stratus of the population. that is dependent on the waste management sector as a means of livelihood. So in one hand, India is enforcing an EPR system that inevitably move towards formalization, but we still have a huge number of a huge informal sector handling with waste management. So in your views, what do you think would be the strategies, or how you think that we could reconcile the formalization required in the EPR system with this informal side? As of course, we talking as UNDP, but also we all here are in the end development professionals trying to be the good for the country, not only for the environment, but in the end for our population. So how we can reconcile this so we don't leave no one behind. At the same time, we try to address these environmental and social issues. So, yeah, over to you.
Good morning, everybody, once again. So thanks, Anderson. So I'll just give a little context. So India, with respect to electronic waste, it enacted the electronic waste management rules, which were quite comprehensive, way back in 2016. And that's the year when the Environment Ministry enacted 6 solid waste management rules related to different solid waste sectors, electronic waste, plastic waste included. There have been subsequent amendments to the rules. And so the 2016 rules talk about an EPR mandate for obligated entities. The 2016 rules, however, apart from the EPR targets, also limits the EPR mandate to collection of electronic waste. Now, at the same time, the ministry has most recently, and perhaps informed by the EPR framework for plastics, also shared draft EPR rules on electronic waste for public comments. And that was again issued in 2022. And the finalization of the EPR framework for electronic waste is still awaited. And if I may add out here that Mr. Vinod Singh, who has joined us from the Environment Ministry from India, has been one of the chief architects of this EPR framework. So subsequently, if there are any further detailed discussions that any of the delegates would like, I think he would be a good person to reach out to for a greater, deeper understanding of how this ecosystem will evolve and what is the government's vision for evolution of this ecosystem. So that is one side of it. That's the regulatory side of it. However, we understand that like in the plastic sector ecosystem, the electronics ecosystem is beset with informality. And arguably, maybe the informal sector is more rampant in the electronic waste ecosystem, and maybe even the other categories of waste. So when we work on plastics, if I may say, and if I had shared yesterday, our lens is that while we want to formalize the entire plastic waste value chain, it should not and it cannot be done at the cost of the informal waste worker, because this would totally run against the grain of leave no one behind, and totally run against the grain of what UNDP really stands for. So the approach that we have in that is that the formal infrastructure that is being created, we try and integrate the informal waste workers, either by providing them livelihoods, by giving them stable jobs, by skilling them, by also encouraging them to come and sell their waste at these facilities, and also going forward to give them linkages to existing government benefit programs. In the space of electronic waste, I think, so there is an estimate that 95% of electronic waste in India is getting channelized through the, and this is an arguable and debatable number. But okay, so I think suffice to say that the majority chunk of electronic waste is still getting channelized through the informal sector, informal channels. It is everybody's case rather, that we should have more formal channelization of waste, because that not only ensures traceability, but it also ensures that the quality of waste treatment is as per norms. It is more environment friendly, and there is greater accountability in the sector. However, let me add out here, and this is an on-ground reality, that formalization of this sector has multiple economic barriers. Any formal process necessarily requires that the recycler would come under within the lens of regulations. And regulatory compliance by itself can be fairly expensive. And I think that is one of the, I would say, overwhelming barriers to formalization of the sector. And I'm sure that this challenge is not just limited to a country like India, but it would be, these barriers would be echoed in other similar countries and perhaps even Europe. However, as we push towards mechanisms, maybe something like the product passport, so how we, as we push towards developing smart solutions, I would say, or AI-based or blockchain-based solutions for traceability of products. So where they land, where they get sold, where they get disposed, potentially where they get refurbished, and potentially finally reach a recycler. If we are able to establish some kind of tech-based tracing of products, then there is a greater chance that we'll be able to create systems, not only data and knowledge on the pathways that the products are following, but also, and that data will help us to bring more and more players in this field into the formal sector. UNDP, I think, going forward, can strengthen this work by ensuring that the informal waste workers are not left out or at a disadvantage because of this formalization process. And I think we have some to learn from the way we are doing it in the plastics ecosystem.
Thank you. Thank you, Saloni. I also recognize Mr. Singh, if you, although you are not part of the panel, if you want to, aggregate anything particularly about the e-waste sector, please be welcome. Not pushing, just open the floor if you like to say anything. But
yeah, just to add on the Saloni ma'am said, India is working on the draft e-waste management rule 2022. However, 2026 notification is already in place, and enforcement is in place also. And as per the target given in the 2016 notification, there is a collection, there has been a mention of collection target only. There is no mention of recycling target. However, when Central Pollution Control Board has given authorization to producers for EPR authorization, they have given mandate to collect and recycle also. And then thereafter, the EPR certificate has been generated. And as per the collection target given in the rules, 2017-18 onwards, starting from the 10%, and right now the collection target is 60%. And as per the collection target into 2017-18, almost 100% target has been achieved through collected and processed 100% of the e-waste. And in 2018-19, there is around 90% collection target has been achieved. But in 2021, due to COVID pandemic, the Industry Association and Recycler Association has requested Ministry to reduce the target because of the inadequate collection of the e-waste. And keeping in this, the Ministry has reduced the target from 40 to 30%. And in that period, the Recycling Association has achieved around 26% of the collection processing target instead of 30%. And in the previous year also, the association has requested, due to pandemic, further collection target has been reduced from 50 to 40%. And Ministry has accepted the challenges of the industry being a problem faced by the industry and reduced the collection target in for 2021 to 50 to 40%. so that the companies have to achieve their target and unnecessary compliance burden or environmental compensation has not been imposed on them. And as for the implementation part of view, so far in India, more than 2,000 producer responsibility organization not producer responsibility organization. Producers have get the EPR authorization under the e-waste management rules, and 82 producer responsibility organization had registered from the CPCB, and they are acting on the behalf of the producers to collect the e-waste and get channelized through the authorized recycler only. And besides that, producer responsibility organization, dismantler and recycler and producer association has also set up around 2,000 e-waste collection point, from where if anybody, either consumer or bulk consumer or any other entity can deposit their e-waste, and from there the dismantler or authorized recycler can get the e-waste and processed in environmentally sound manner.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Singh, for the additional information. I think I'm going to pause this discussion a little bit about the social part versus the informal versus formal, because I mean, we have the experiences in Indonesia through the e-waste, let's say e-waste plastic projects, although the technical name were much more complex, but let's call it to simplify, in which Indonesia worked with the informal sector for recollection of plastics from the e-waste, supported these strategies that Guillermo mentioned about avoiding cross-contamination with the regular plastics because of the chemical compounds on it. And also, I know that Indonesia also worked on proposing EPR and eco-design for e-waste plastics, right? In this case, it's a complex environment because it doesn't only involve the manufacturing, but also the importers and the retailers in this whole process, right? They are all part of the chain. So in your view, in your experience in Indonesia, how you can aggregate these different actors and their roles in an EPR scheme for e-waste? Could you share some experiences how it was done in Indonesia, so these responsibilities could be shared within the limits of the project?
Thank you, Anderson. Good morning, everyone. I would like to share with you, could you jump to the video that we are going to share? So it is something different that you can look at this because we have been working on this kind of activity. Actually, we are involving the community-based organization to make sure that they are involved in this. So that's So this is the for the regular this product that we need to make sure that it will be available to manufacturing industry for and in the next video you will find how we work together with the local governments, and please have a look at this.
Mini Depo adalah sebuah fasilitas yang dikembangkan oleh proyek PBDE dan UPOPS yang merupakan proyek kerjasama antara UNDP dengan Kementerian Perindustrian Republik Indonesia dan didanai oleh Global Environment Facility. Mini Depo di Kota Depok merupakan salah satu bentuk implementasi proyek mitigasi polutan PBDE dan UPOPS yang dilaksanakan dengan dukungan dari Dinas Lingkungan Hidup dan Kebersihan pemerintah Kota Depok dengan tujuan untuk menjadi fasilitas penerimaan bagi panas sementara dan penyaluran limbah peralatan listrik dan elektronik atau e-waste di Kota Depok dan sekitarnya. Mini Depo Depok pihak baik perorangan maupun institusi
And the e-waste
Petugas
from
mini depo
various
menerima permintaan
parties, from
pengambilan e-waste,
individuals, from
kemudian mencatat data
other
identitas dan
parts of
informasi
the
pendonor
city can
seperti
be
nama,
collected,
alamat
and
pengambilan,
the
nomor telepon,
officers of the
serta
people who
memastikan
work
waktu
there
pengambilan.
have to make
Petugas
sure
mini
that
depo
it
juga akan
is
menanyakan jenis e-waste dan
segregated
jumlahnya.
into different kinds of
Setelah
e-waste
mencatat
itself,
data pendonor e-waste
and
dan
they
memastikan
are
waktu
ready to
pengambilan,
collect that kind of
petugas mini depo
e-waste
akan mengambil e-waste
based
di
on the
lokasi yang telah
communication that they
ditentukan.
have with the
Petugas
owners
yang
of the
mengambil
e-waste
e-waste ini
itself.
akan mengenakan alat pelindung diri
And
atau APD. Sebaiknya,
the
petugas
collectors
mengenakan
itself, the
sepatu,
facility
bukan
is
sendal
not
atau
allowed
sepatu sendal,
to work
dan
on
akan lebih
the
baik lagi
e-waste for
jika mengenakan safety
dismantling
shoes.
and processing, because this facility has to work together with the
E-waste yang diambil dari
companies
pihak donor
who have
kemudian
license from
dimasukkan
the
ke dalam
Ministry of
kendaraan
Environment and
dan
Forestry.
ditata dengan rapi
The
untuk
companies
memudahkan
must have
pengangkutan
that
dan mengurangi risiko kerusakan
license,
atau
because
kebocoran.
as we heard
Untuk
earlier,
memudahkan
and
penataan,
we
e-waste yang
aware
berukuran kecil
that
seperti
the
laptop dan handphone
the
dimasukkan ke
companies
dalam
must
wadah
have
atau
good
kontainer.
understandings and capacity on how
Kendaraan
to deal
pengangkut
with the
e-waste harus
hazardous and
dilengkapi dengan
toxic
penutup seperti box atau
substances
terpal
that
untuk menghindari e-waste dari
products,
paparan sinar
may
matahari dan air
So
hujan.
this is the process they have been working in
Setibanya di
coordination
mini
with the
depo,
local authorities
petugas
and also the
menurunkan barang
owners
atau
and
e-waste ke
the
area
facility
unloading dan
itself,
melakukan pencatatan.
That they have to
Pencatatan
unload it
barang
and
dilakukan oleh petugas
register,
dengan cara
and also
mengisi
report
formulir
to
penerimaan
the
e-waste di mini
local
depo
authorities
Depok.
and to the
Petugas mengisi
central
informasi mengenai
government
tanggal
through
penerimaan,
a system
nama
that has
e-waste,
been
merek,
established by
tipe,
the central
jumlah,
government.
dan data pendonor
And
seperti
if you
nama
want
dan
to
nomor
check
telepon.
the
Petugas juga menuliskan
website,
namanya
you can
dan
find,
menandatangani formulir.
based on the actual
Data yang
that
dicatat
they
pada
can
formulir ini
report from the
kemudian akan
fields,
dipindahkan
and
ke komputer.
there is an increasing
Setelah
number
melakukan pencatatan,
collected,
petugas kemudian
populated
memilah e-waste dan
from the
menyimpan
fields
berdasarkan
collected.
jenisnya.
So that's the response that I can
Area
share with
penyimpanan
you.
di mini depo Depok dibagi menjadi 4 bagian. Area A digunakan untuk perangkat elektronik kategori 1 seperti TV, monitor tabung, layar LCD atau LED, CPU, printer, scanner, LCD projector, video player, radio, dan speaker. Area B digunakan untuk perangkat elektronik kategori 2 seperti laptop, notebook, handphone, tablet, charger
cannot
lamp,
do anything else with that one, right? Just to confirm.
Yeah. We need to register, collect that kind of e-waste, and then the recycling industry will take care of the rest of the activities. So they have the equipments and also the license to work together with the other companies, whether the what you call, like, the materials that they have collected, and then they will share it to other companies who are willing to pay for other products that they will have in the process itself. For the plastics, we'll go to the plastic for the activities, but for the metals, for example, for the gold itself will be processed through the gold companies. And if you are following the Asian, for example, the gold was actually produced from the recycling industries at the time. So that kind of stuff that they have to conduct in coordination with the other companies. So it's not a single company that they will work together, but different sections. Although we go to certain company, and then this company will go to other companies. They are related to the kind of products like we have heard from Lenovo, for example. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anton. Now I'll turn to Guillermo, but also I would like to open to the floor also to Wayne as our resource person, if you can also contribute to that discussion. And I mean, we have a project in China that look into secondary metals recycling, and they are very worried about also secondary batteries, because they understand, I mean, as the biggest automotive industry in the world, and knowing that the stocks of lithium are finite. So they are worried about the future demands of batteries in the sector. So it's about sustainability of the whole e-mobility. And in UNDP and in several countries here, you are starting already. You have a unique opportunity to build this e-mobility sector from zero. We have many projects now being submitted to the GEF and GCF to start an organized way to tackle these and to establish a whole robust mobility system. But somehow it seems it still lacks the circularity of e-mobility system. So I would like to hear from you your experiences and view on how we can make the e-mobility system circular, particularly when it comes to the batteries that, of course, the whole car is there and there is also plastics in the car that we need to take care. But also, I mean, the battery, considering how delicate it is to handle a lithium battery because of this flammability, that will also pose huge challenges. And we know electric car tends to be less expensive than in the longer run. But at the same time, the battery will probably cost half of it. So there will be a huge logistic and economic burden on the clients also in that regard. So the floor is yours if you want to contribute to that discussion.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to maybe to stress more on the part of the plastics with PVDs, with flame retardants. Because when we do the balance, and I was showing the slides with the list of things that have to be built in countries are like we propose in the plastics project in India to do the country's materials balance for plastic. It may seem too basic, but it is true. We need to know the flow of materials, where do they go and what, and that it is not just the life cycle analysis, but also the economics, the flow of money, because that is what moves the systems. Unfortunately, laws are not enough. Laws and regulations and policies are not enough. The market forces are also very important. That is what determines the informal sector in Mexico, as I was saying, just the capacity authorized by the government to process e-waste is 25% of what is produced. And that is their authorized capacity. Normally, companies ask for authorized capacities that are larger than what they have. So maybe 90% of the waste goes into the informal. That is true, and that is not only Mexico. Many other countries in Latin America, at least as far as I know, maybe the different case here. Europe is more advanced, 50s, 60% of formal and processing. But then, when you do this balance, plastics that are 30% of the waste, and the average, that's 53 million, then we have 15, 16 million tons of plastic. And from those, we have 10 to 20% of those have flame retardants. So that part, as Anderson was mentioning, they have only one way to go, either into the recycling, because it is a good quality plastic. It can be used very well. It is a good quality plastic. So then the plastic manufacturers may take those parts of the streams and recycling it, mixing it, and cross-contaminating many other plastic uses. And as we all know, the POPs are persistent, so they remain into that. For me, that is one of the tasks to address, and that can also be done much more easily in e-waste through blockchain to do the tracking of the system and knowing where it can be. I was expecting to hear from the Lenovo presentation, how do they collect their waste? Because they say they recycle a certain amount, but well, I couldn't grasp, were too small for me, so I couldn't see how do they collect their own waste? Because it's always difficult to collect from different brands. How do you know that you are collecting your own brand? But that is one side, and the other goes into the batteries. It is not just the lithium, but the cobalt. Cobalt is also another strategic metal that it is. Many of the batteries have either nickel, cobalt, or manganese together with the lithium. So those metals are also becoming more important every time. 60 or 70% of cobalt is produced just in one country in Africa. So it will become, at least in Mexico, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is taking into account the lithium question for electromobility as a future. But that would be my comments on this.
Thank you. Don't know when you want to add anything.
We can change. So, well, as I said before, the new European battery regulation is very much focused on especially the question on car batteries. So it's a large part of the new regulation contains efforts for car batteries. And I can give an example from Sweden, where we have now a quite large battery manufacturer called Northvolt, and they will build or they have already, a recycling facility next door to where they produce new batteries. So they will have, together with the car manufacturers, a return change where they take back the batteries and they recycle them themselves, not through the recyclers, but themselves. So they really take the producer responsibility in charge, which I think is very important. And of course, sometimes we will see that car batteries also will have a second life with other purpose. And that's the reason why we introduced this product passport. So you can then follow it back again to the producers, to the Northvolt, whether it was not used perhaps in a car battery, but for electricity storage or something different like that. So I think when it comes to car batteries, obviously the battery manufacturers will do much of the work, because it's so substantial, as you said, Anderson, substantial part economically and also physically.
Thank you. Thank you. So like then to open the floor, if there is any question from you to the panelists, but also see if you want to lead the discussion to any other subject that you believe that is important. Okay, I don't see any hands raised. Okay, maybe just this is more an open-ended question for the ones that want to take. How do you see the possibility of implementing equivalent RoHS standards in Asia when it comes for the e-waste, the circularity and EPR or e-waste in your countries, and maybe also coming back to what Guillermo said, also taking into consideration one of the most delicate parts of it, that is the plastics that could be contaminated with PBDs, and not forcing too much the discussion, but it's because there is an international, very clear international convention that regulates this whole discussion about persistent organic pollutants, and all the countries sitting here, they are signatories of this convention. So on top of the EPR scheme itself, another layer of preoccupation is also to comply with international regulations about it. So this.
So I just would like to share that the e-waste management rules of 2016, they clearly mention and they place the onus of responsibility on the manufacturer and the producer, that they've put an upper cap on various hazardous materials that can be a part of the product. So for most of them, it is 0.1% on homogenized weight basis. And for cadmium, it's 0.01% on homogenized weight basis. The same criteria has been transported to the extended to the 2022 draft that has been put out in the public domain. And the onus for ensuring that this is that this upper cap is maintained is on the manufacturer and the producer. And there is a provision for carrying out spot checks to ensure that the amount does not, the content does not exceed the amount that is permitted. However, again, bringing the matter back to the formal and informal sector, that these things will be possible to monitor and ensure in the formal sector or the formal recycling value chain. And the informal sector would still fall between the cracks, and it would be difficult to ensure it in the informal sector. And therefore, this is also one of the reasons for strengthening the case for formalization and traceability of e-waste.
Yeah, continuing the lesson learned or the experience of India. In Indonesia, when we talk about the standard of e-waste itself is not really applied yet. But in terms of the standard for the products, and then we have been working with the Ministry of Industry and also the standardization agency, and we have been working with them. And when we introduce certain materials or certain substance that has been regulated by the UN conventions like the Stockholm conventions, it was something new for the government itself, because it was very difficult for the government to understand the substance without the laboratory equipment or proper equipment. And in the past, before the implementations of our project, the government had to send the samples to Japan, for example, to make sure that the product contains certain materials, and the producers or the companies at the time had difficulty to sell to market the products to the more developed countries. I mean, for certain products that had not had that kind of equipment. So by having the project, then the government started realizing that kind of importance, and then the government started to import and also use that kind of equipment to analyze the kind of substance in the products that they import and also sell to the market, either in Europe, Japan, or in other developed countries like in North America. So and it has been a standard of practice for Indonesia to make sure that Indonesia is not going to be the dump site, this site of this e-waste or the products that have been regulated by the Stockholm conventions. So there have been certain degrees of activities from the regulatory framework, technical guidance, and also certain levels that the government had to meet. Thank you.
Yes, when I was government officer at one time in my life for the Ministry of Environment. I was in charge of the hazardous waste area, federal level. I proposed to the minister that Mexico became the recycler of the United States because they are the largest waste producers in the world. And the minister came back to me and said, it would be good, we would have much of material to work with, but we cannot be the backyard dump of the United States politically. But on the practical side, that was the waste. In the case of, as Anton was saying, it is in Mexico, maybe we could do a survey here and see in which of your countries e-waste is considered hazardous for the laws, for the practical laws. And because many times it gets diluted and then you say, no, it is not hazardous, but only some parts as Basel Convention and Stockholm Convention established, only some parts of e-waste is hazardous. But where to withdraw the line in the operation side, buying these huge mountains of plastic computers cases, and then we have to separate which of those have flame retardants, PVDs, and which don't. As I was saying, and a chemical analysis in Mexico cannot be done. It has to be sent to Europe or to the United States, $50 or $100 per piece. So these millions, the only way we can do it with this handheld X-ray fluorescence, where you analyze bromine, and then you could do this separation at a very small fraction of the cost. That equipment costs about maybe $30,000, $40,000, but it can be used hundreds of thousands of times to analyze bromine and then do just a pre-separation and identify, because there are many other bromine compounds which are not COPs, not POPs, so they could be. But the question is here to draw the line and to try to screen out whichever part has the brominated compounds of that are POPs. But then when we come into these regulations, even the go in my country, government officers, well, they cannot push into a new standard. To produce one standard in Mexico may take 5 years. The standard, a law may take 10. Like in Chile, the EPR regulation for plastics took 11 years. So along all this time, the waste continues going on, being released.
Thank you all panelists. I think that we are almost reaching the lunchtime, the most important time of the of the workshop. So I'm not going to keep you too much. I just wanted to take to then summarize the discussion. 3 takeaways that I could realize from the discussion. First, I think that we need to take care, as was mentioned by Saloni and others, that we need to take care about this transition from informal to the formality, right? Because of course we are working for the good of the environment, but this can bring unintended impacts to our society, right? We know there are maybe thousands of people that depend on these current informal schemes, and we need to think about them, not to leave them behind in this transition, right? Because it's not healthy and basically can undermine the whole solution that we are proposing. Right?
The second one, I think that Anton and Guillermo mentioned very good, is about the creating and strengthening the capacities in our countries. And the example of laboratory is one of the most evident. You know, how you're going to control and monitor and enforce if you don't even have the internal capacities to identify these ways, to monitor and to establish a tracking system to make sure that EPR schemes are functioning, and also their sustainability, as Wayne talked in the first day, how you learn and how you learn from your experiences and how you continue to upgrade these systems over time. And finally, this is my own takeaway that we understood, is the internal cooperation, because we know our countries, because of our economics, we cannot produce everything that we consume. And every time we import electronic equipment, we are also importing waste that we have to deal later. And there is a number of international agreements that restrict the waste. And there is a number of countries that are restricting even more the movement of waste. The plastic is a good example. And these eventually leave countries that are in a more sensitive position and how you address it. So the country can have all the good intentions to establish the EPR and manage this problem, but in the end, if you don't know what to do, if you don't have the technical capacity to handle this system inside the country, you will continue we will just be shifting the problem, right? You are just creating a model regulation, but in the end, you cannot reprocess, you cannot include this waste in a circular economy, and at the same time you cannot export because other countries don't accept this type of material. So international cooperation is also required. Maybe government officials need to bring this back to the countries, that it's more than the responsibility of only the Minister of Environment. It's also a responsibility of Minister of External Relations, a Minister of Finance, a Minister of Economy, Minister of Industry, something that can only be solved in an integrated manner. So I think is all. Thank you very much, and enjoy your lunch. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hands. Mr. Singh, you want to add something?
Yeah, just to add on the concerns of the informal sector to become the formal sector. Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, under the aegis of Government of India, has recently starting the financial schemes for to become a informal recycling sector to the formal recycler sector, and they are proposing in their scheme 25% of the capital cost. And that's why this will help in informal sector to become the formal sector. And this scheme is only for the recycling of the e-waste management sector only.
Yeah, thank you for the additional information.
Formal sector to become a formal sector.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll be very glad if you later can share with us some more information. Just for your info, for everybody here, after this workshop, of course, we are going to create a web page as a resource center. We are going to upload all the materials and the videos so you can consult later. So we would appreciate very much if India could further provide more detailed information for knowledge sharing. But thank you.